This crash was so big, it changed the world of racing forever. I'll also show the crash where one driver went airborne, the incident which began as a mini collision but ended horribly. And gotta start with this crash. This incident was so big, it gave Mercedes a nightmare.
On board with George Russell. Yes, because he gets onto the grass.
What the was he doing? Honestly.
That's Valtteri Bottas and George Russell who are out of this race.
Damn, that was brutal. But this race start was even more brutal. Because when this driver, Nico Hülkenberg, tried to overtake, his entire world went upside down.
They're really fancied with some top speed down there and move. And that is the Renault going over and over and over and out of this race.
Man, that's scary. But guys, that was just a level 2 crash. Later, we'll show the biggest crash, which changed racing forever. But first, you gotta see what happened at the Belgian Grand Prix. Because right at the race start, when Romain Grosjean collided with Hamilton, this happened.
Must make a good start on pole. Hamilton's contact. Oh, and he's hit the Lotus. Romain Grosjean over the top of Alonso. Alonso's out. Hamilton's out. Kobayashi's out. Real drama.
Also, for all the legends out there, just so you know, Fernando Alonso was the biggest loser here, as he lost the 2012 championship because of this. But Schumacher lost big too, because ever since Schumacher debuted in F1, no, not Michael the GOAT, his son Mick, ever since he joined F1, he has crashed a lot. I mean, way lots.
Tyres up.
Oh dear.
And lost it. Through Massenet into Casino Square.
But his crash in Saudi was the biggest, because when he started his flying lap in qualifying, he pushed way too much, and so this happened.
Yeah, I'm confident.
Oh, Otmar! Two tyres coming loose as he hit the wall as well.
Luckily, nothing happened to him. By the way, these crashes are only going to get bigger and bigger, like this incident. It was the Tuscan Grand Prix. Max Verstappen got a terrible start. He'd already dropped from P3 to P12 by the first corner. But just when things couldn't get any worse for him, this happened.
Alex Albon under pressure as well, and there's a tangle there, and it's the McLaren of Carlos Sainz has been spun round. In the Alfa Romeo, he goes up into the air, he hits Grosjean, he hits Verstappen.
4 cars collided, leaving a bunch of debris on track. But guys, that was nothing. Because literally a few minutes later, when the safety car came back in and the race restarted, disaster happened. But let them clear the debris first, and we'll come back to it. Meanwhile, you gotta see this ridiculous crash that happened in the US. Because when Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Steve Park were racing hard, this happened.
Oh, Steve Park is off into the infield. Another car ball over on his lid. It's Park and Dale Jr. Here's another look at it. He was trying to go on the outside of Rusty.
Man, that was brutal. But not as brutal as this incident, because when Mark Webber was trying to overtake, this happened.
Oh no! Mark Webber's gone right up there. Oh, Mark!
He was trying to slipstream the Lotus.
Thank God he was okay. But before I show you the big disaster that happened in that Tuscan Grand Prix, you gotta see this incident first. Because when Charles Leclerc in his Ferrari was racing, at first, it was going normally. But then...
Charles Leclerc! And that is a very big accident involving Charles Leclerc as well. Just seen a huge accident at the Parabolica.
Are you okay?
Was a big crash.
Glad he's okay. But did you know, a famous incident also happened on this track? When Lewis Hamilton came out after a pit stop, Max Verstappen was right behind him. And well, we all know what happens when they get close.
It's wheel to wheel, Hamilton and Verstappen, and they are both out! This time Verstappen and Hamilton have crashed out as Hamilton came from his pit stop.
Man, these guys are crazy. But this crash was crazy too, because even though it started as a minor touch, it ended horribly.
Oh, look out! Trouble further back! It is Ryan Preece, barrel rolling down the back straightaway, end over end, side over side, as the car breaks loose in a horrific crash.
That was brutal. Glad he's okay. But this incident was simply not okay. Because when the Canadian Grand Prix started, everything seemed normal at first, but then Carlos Sainz and Romain Grosjean thought, how's that possible? And so, crash.
Straight into the barriers goes Carlos Sainz and also Felipe Massa.
I have no idea what's happened, man. Somebody just pushed me completely.
That was just ridiculous, but I'm glad nobody was hurt. But there's one driver who's continuously hurting motorsport, and he is none other than Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll. Well, what can I say about Lance Stroll?
Crashes Brendan Hartley, and he's got tangled up with Lance Stroll.
A legend.
Never seen a Formula 1 car crash like that on the exit.
The GOAT.
Can you stay out on this condition? Can you stay out?
He is the reason behind some of the most ridiculous moments in racing history, but he showed his finest skills in the US Grand Prix. Because when the actual GOAT, Fernando Alonso, was about to pass Stroll, this happened.
Fernando Alonso Alonso goes off the track and he's made contact with Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin.
You okay?
Yes, mate. Very late one.
Do you think that Stroll should race anymore in F1? Comment below. But first, you've got to see what happened in Brazil. Because on lap 36, when Eddie Irvine moved left to lap Eric Bernard, he failed to spot Jos Verstappen, who was on his left, and thus disaster.
Bang! I was wondering it didn't knock him out cold.
4 cars got involved in this. Martin Brundle escaped this crash with no injuries, even though Verstappen's tyre did touch Brundle's helmet. Now that's a miracle. But finally, here's what happened at that Tuscan Grand Prix. When all the debris was cleared and safety car went back in, everybody was hoping to see a great battle, especially at the front, since Hamilton in his Mercedes was right behind his then teammate Bottas. But since Hamilton was right behind him, Bottas took full time to put temperature into his tyres. Now this was uncommon, as usually a driver doesn't take that much time to restart, and some drivers at the back did not know that Bottas hadn't restarted yet. They thought the race already started, and so disaster.
Lights go green and Bottas is away and there's a big crash at the back and that is the Alfa Romeo.
It was obvious.
Oh, that's not good.
And the front hadn't yet accelerated. The back of the pack decided the race was back underway, and
That was stupid from whoever was at the front. They want to kill us or what?
Man, I'm just glad no one got hurt. But now that we're at the top 3 crashes of this video, they're the biggest ones ever. Like the major incident that happened at Le Mans. When Peter Dumbrek in his Mercedes was racing with a Toyota in front, this happened.
Again, this is an awful accident, and that looks horrifically like, but that's a big impact. Look at the earth thrown up.
This serious aerodynamic flaw was seen not once, not twice, but thrice in that week. 3 times the car flipped in the air like that. But at least the driver survived, thank God. But this crash was simply crazy, because when Daniel Juncadella hit the wall towards the exit, it created chaos.
Major damage to the car, but we'll keep you informed. Oh no! Oh, mayhem! And there's millions of dollars of damage here.
16 cars were involved in this crash. 16. Only 4 cars came back to the pits. Now that's just ridiculous. But finally, here's the level 15 crash, the unseen moment of the incident between Hamilton and Verstappen. It was the British Grand Prix. Verstappen and Hamilton are fighting hard for the championship. In all the races, it had been a close battle, but this was the UK. So obviously Hamilton's the home favourite, and pressure on Verstappen, but that didn't stop him. He gets a decent start and leads the Grand Prix, but Hamilton's still right behind him. Both were racing hard, but just when they reached the cop's corner, disaster.
Hamilton's going to try again, this time on the inside, a continent touch! Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen coming together, Hamilton continues, Verstappen is out of the race and that's a big crash!
Max was shell-shocked. I guess anybody would be. But thank God he survived. And after all the medical centre checkups, he was okay. But do you know what else was beautiful? The most beautiful moments in racing. Like when Mercedes gave one kid the ride of a lifetime. Or the incredible move this driver made, which created the most beautiful moment in history. And I know you want to watch it, so just click it.
From Hamilton's devastating crash to Verstappen's dramatic incident, which even destroyed a F1 driver's career. These are the terrible crashes that changed F1 forever.
An absolutely smeared championship protagonists have taken each other.
And we gotta start with Fernando Alonso. In 2016, Alonso crashed badly as he went flying against a wall in the Australian Grand Prix. He went flipping through the air before coming to rest upside down at 200 miles per hour. Luckily, he wasn't seriously injured and was capable of escaping his McLaren. But trust me guys, that's nothing. Because what Max's father, Jos Verstappen, suffered from was one of the most infamous fire incidents in F1 history. At the 1994 Hockenheim race, Jos came to the pits after 15 laps, hoping for a regular pit stop, but instead, he experienced the shock of his life. Fuel got sprayed out of the fueling hose and ignited his hot car. This became a huge disaster, as Verstappen in his car and his surroundings caught fire. Everything went up into flames, and it was suddenly dark and black, and I couldn't breathe. And despite this disaster, pit stop refueling still remained in F1 till 2010. But eventually, after several more incidents occurred due to refueling, it got banned for good. But even though Jos survived his fiery crash, another driver couldn't, which not only made headlines, but also became one of the worst moments in F1's history. In 1994, the crash at the San Marino GP changed F1 forever. Roland Ratzenberger, an Austrian driver who had competed in just 3 F1 races, crashed his car into a wall at 195.7 miles per hour during qualifying, resulting in his loss. But unfortunately, that wasn't all. Ayrton Senna, one of the best F1 drivers in history, crashed and passed away the next day due to one of the most horrifying crashes in F1 history. There are even rumours that the Brazilian was considering not competing in the Grand Prix because he was so devastated by Ratzenberger's passing. Sadly, Senna made the decision to race, and on lap 7, he lost control of his vehicle and hit an exposed concrete barrier at a speed of about 192 miles per hour. This incident created a great deal of changes in F1, with more emphasis being placed on the safety of F1 drivers. To minimize dangerous detachments and crashes, testing methods for tire barriers were made mandatory. Barriers were secured by rubber belts, and wheel tethers were adopted. But while these terrible crashes changed F1, some crashes also crushed one F1 driver's reputation. And we all know which Russian driver I'm talking about. Nikita Mazepin's rookie season made some big headlines, but not for any good reasons. He was a laughingstock. Even before his career got started, he was already being judged. And when he crashed in the first race of the year, obviously it didn't help him. But seriously guys, crash in the first race? I mean, come on. Even Sergio Perez repeatedly called him an idiot at the Portuguese Grand Prix. Also, his relationship with ex-teammate Mick Schumacher also deteriorated, and to the point where Mick even declared that he wanted to finish him. Oh boy, that got serious. But while this Haas driver's crashes were simply ridiculous, another Haas driver was also involved in a crash, which not only changed his life, but also changed F1 forever. During the opening lap of the 2018 Bahrain Grand Prix, Romain Grosjean was involved in a terrifying crash. He reached a peak force of 67 Gs when he crashed into a metal barrier at 119 miles per hour. This split his car into half and caused an explosion. Grosjean was trapped in the cockpit for 27 seconds before he managed to escape through the raging fire. But later, he revealed that the main reason he's alive is because of the halo, which definitely has become a huge part of F1 safety. But despite the safety precautions, some crashes were simply unavoidable, especially when it looked like a driver would do anything to harm their teammates' chances of winning. And we're of course talking about Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg. Despite winning both Constructors and Drivers' Championships, things got personal for the Mercedes drivers, especially at the height of it, when the pair took out each other on the opening lap at the Spanish Grand Prix. The crash was so bad that it not only fractured their already tense relationship, but also had Mercedes threaten to sack both drivers. But what's interesting is the pair were actually childhood friends, and even after that, their friendship suffered and got ruined to the point where Lewis even told Mercedes that he didn't want to race for them again. Niki Lauda also stressed that both drivers pushed each other to the limit, hence the crash. But turns out, this crash was nothing compared to the crash that Niki experienced during his racing days, which was so devastating that it forced F1 to make changes. It was 1976, German Grand Prix. Bad weather and track coverage meant that parts of the Nürburgring circuit were wet. Now, what's interesting is, even though Lauda was the fastest driver on the circuit, he still expressed his displeasure with the track and asked his fellow drivers to abandon the race. But unfortunately, he was outvoted, and as such, the race went ahead. And sadly, at the notoriously dangerous Bergwerk corner, he lost control of his Ferrari, veered off the track, collided with a wall, and his car burst into flames. The Austrian driver suffered severe burns to his head, hands, and inhaled hot fumes that damaged his lungs. And after being taken to the hospital, he fell into a coma and was even given his last rites. But he survived, thank God. But while Niki Lauda's crash became a defining moment in his career, Nicholas Latifi's crashes were also pretty much defining, but not in the way he wanted. In the final laps of the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, Latifi ruined it for Mercedes. Hamilton saw his lead cut after Latifi crashed into the barriers. But as apologetic as Latifi was about the incident, he did little to change his Latifi status, as he also crashed behind a safety car at the Monaco Grand Prix. Behind a safety car? I mean, come on, how does that even happen? Well, this is what Latifi said. The throttle didn't get stuck, but it was like the throttle got stuck. It was very strange and surprising at the same time, and I was already going so slow there, I was just a passenger at that point. The car is driving forward and I'm not on the gas, so I don't know what's happening here. Well, now that's one way to put it. But remarkably, that wasn't all. During the Japanese Grand Prix practice session, he got lost and turned down a dead end. And instead of continuing down the track layout, he made a 180-degree turn and went the wrong way. This obviously didn't go unnoticed, but instead of owning up, once again, he blamed the incident on the car being strange. Go Tiffy, go Tiffy. What a guy. But while Latifi's crashes luckily didn't cause any serious harm, unfortunately we can't say the same thing for Antoine Hubert. Because, as we all know, the crash he was involved in was simply devastating. In the Belgian Grand Prix, the F2 driver was involved in a high-speed crash. On the second lap, Hubert collided into a barrier near the high-speed Eau Rouge turn and was then struck by another driver, Juan Manuel Correa, which caused Hubert's car to be completely destroyed. Antoine later succumbed to his injuries and thus couldn't survive. But sadly, that's not all. Because Formula One racing icon Jackie Stewart also experienced a similar incident at the same corner. Stewart was left facing his end when he crashed his car at the Spa circuit, which left him hanging upside down with fuel trickling down his face. He was safely rescued from his automobile by 2 other drivers, and since then, he's led multiple campaigns to increase drivers' safety. But surprisingly, his initial thoughts were that seatbelts were unnecessary and uncomfortable. But since then, he's changed his mind after these many new safety measures prevented from losing many drivers. When I was starting in the Formula One world, the tracks were hideously dangerous. There were no runoff areas, and it was just crazy. Ridiculous things like telegraph poles were up close and personal. But while Stewart already changed his views about seatbelts, Carlos Sainz's crash still forced the FIA to dig deeper regarding its seatbelt rule. During the second practice at the Monza circuit, Carlos Sainz crashed hard into the wall at the Ascari chicane. The impact was so heavy that Sainz was pushed pretty far forward towards his steering wheel, despite having his seatbelt on. F1 fans got extremely alarmed by this, but the FIA still noted that while Sainz's case was strange, it's normal for seatbelts to give a little impact because doing so is far safer for the human body than when they are rigid. Even Michael Massey said, "I think the seatbelts are made to stretch. We will look at the seatbelt, as we do with any major incident or significant incident like this, and see what we can learn from it." But even though this crash created FIA ways to improve the sport, another crash created dispute among Red Bull's teammates, which even led to one of them leaving the racing team. At the 2018 Azerbaijan Grand Prix, both Red Bull drivers, Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo, crashed into each other while battling on the long straight. Both of them seemed to move under braking. Verstappen defended too hard and Ricciardo attacked too aggressively, thereby resulting in a double DNF. After the race, Ricciardo even said that Verstappen's cutting into him annoyed him, and his frustration increased when he realized that the team wouldn't help him. We touched wheels a few times where it was always Max coming into me, as opposed to me going into Max. Part of me was waiting for the team to say cut the sh, but never really got that. I'll say now, I was more just like, F you guys. Wow, I never saw Ricciardo angry before, but Ricciardo later explained that this Baku incident eventually made him leave the Milton Keynes-based team, since Verstappen was just ready to end his career. Even the team boss, Christian Horner, believes that Ricciardo was running from a fight with his teammate. And today, we all know who ended up where. Verstappen is a 2-time champion, and by looking at Red Bull's performance, he'll be a 5-time champ soon. Ricciardo, however, did return to Red Bull, but as a reserve driver to his former teammate. But still, this crash was nothing compared to what Guan Yu Zhou had at the British Grand Prix. At the opening lap of the race, George Russell collided with the Alfa Romeo driver Guan Yu Zhou, which then sent the Chinese driver's car flying across the track, sliding on its halo before being sent over a concrete barrier and into the retaining wall. This crash was so severe, as Zhou was literally skidding while upside down for a considerable amount of time. But thankfully, Zhou was unharmed, owing it to the halo, and even confirmed on Twitter that the halo saved his life. The halo is just one of the numerous inventions that shows how much F1 has advanced in terms of safety and saved so many lives. But unfortunately, we can't say the same for Jules Bianchi. This young, talented driver, who was the first person ever to be in the Ferrari Drivers Academy, had his dream dashed when he crashed his car into a 6,500 kilogram crane, which was clearing German driver Adrian Suttill's car. Suttill's car had spun out of control and crashed in the same spot the lap earlier, and as a result, his car was still being cleared by the crane when Bianchi lost control of his car on the same curve and crashed into the crane at 78 miles per hour and ultimately lost his life. This tragic incident forced the FIA to implement the 4-hour rule, which requires that races held during the day must take place no less than 4 hours before sundown, along with modifications to track drainage and how emergency vehicles handle collisions. But even if these drivers' crashes created some positive rule changes, sometimes F1 drivers simply force the FIA to make a rule change. But this time, it's just for their benefit. One F1 driver forced a rule change just to gain an unfair advantage in the race. Another driver forced it, which was so bizarre that it even changed F1's future forever. But who are these drivers? And what changes did they enforce? But more importantly, why? I know you want to hear more about this, so just click the video right here.
These drivers made history as they created the craziest crash F1 has ever seen. I'll also show the crash which ruined every driver's race, the incident which put a driver in hospital, and begin with this crazy crash. This crash took everyone by surprise as it made one driver take off.
Sebastian Vettel, and there's locking up in a crash. Fernando Alonso goes over the top there of Charles Leclerc's Sauber. He got hit from behind by Hulkenberg, didn't they?
Luckily, none of them got any serious injuries, but bigger luck was required for this driver because what he went through was devastating. Robert Kubica was trying to overtake in the Canadian Grand Prix, but just when he got up close to Jarno Trulli's Toyota, disaster happened.
Last year for that, that's a big accident for Kubica.
Kubica was found unconscious when the car finally stopped, but luckily he survived. In fact, when he opened his eyes, he even asked if he could participate in the next Grand Prix. Man, these guys are tough. But this was still nothing compared to the crashes coming up next, like the one that happened in Australia, which made 8 cars retire from the race, and of course, the craziest F1 crash, which shocked the entire world. But first, check out what this driver, Vitaly Petrov, did, especially since he decided to jump. Even his steering wheel came off. Now that's crazy. But it wasn't as crazy as this race, because what happened here was simply a joke. It was the Austrian Grand Prix, sunny skies. Everyone was expecting a normal race, but what they actually got was everything but normal, because right at the race start, this happened.
And as you see, there is a shambles as 2 cars spin off, and now
the race got red flagged, and after all the mess was cleared, the grid started readjusting to have the restart. But little did they know that right after the restart, an unbelievable thing's gonna happen, which will affect every driver's race. And while the cars get ready for the restart, check out what happened here in Monaco, since these two went on top of each other. I guess they just couldn't control themselves. But this driver couldn't control his car either, which ended so horribly, it even became life-threatening. It was qualifying in Hungary. Felipe Massa was having a normal session, but then, all of a sudden, a spring got loose from the car in front, which suddenly came flying towards him. Before Massa could do something, the spring went through his visor and injured him above the left eye. This made Massa unconscious, while he was still going at full speed. Ultimately, he went straight across a runoff area and crashed. Felipe was quickly taken to the medical center, and so he survived that horrific incident. But nothing's more horrific than this crazy crash.
He's having a go again now. Getting a token burger, but... Oh dear! Oh dear!
Now that's crazy. But this driver did something crazy too, which even destroyed the race.
the Italian Grand Prix, we've got a car approaching sideways, he takes 2 out with him. Somebody arriving sideways down.
Now that's one way to overtake, but before I show you what happened at that restart of the Austrian Grand Prix, check out this crash in Australia, as it was simply a disaster.
With Ralf Schumacher trying to squeeze through David Coulthard, and contact! Ralf Schumacher in the air, cars all over the place.
8 cars retired due to this. 8! And these two retired from the race as well. But the reason for it is not so good. Lewis Hamilton and Kimi Raikkonen were fighting for the Canadian Grand Prix win, but it was Lewis who got in the lead and even made an early gap from the rest. Things got pretty boring as Hamilton kept increasing the gap, which meant ultimately he's going to win the race. But then a car stopped on track, which caused a safety car. So almost all the top cars pitted to get a cheap pit stop, which included Hamilton and Raikkonen as well. Finally, the race got exciting as everyone believed the top 3 will now fight for the win. Adrian.
For a good 8 or 9 seconds.
Hamilton has smashed into the back of Raikkonen, and that is an unbelievable thing to happen.
F1 champions, everybody! But at least nothing major happened. Unlike this crash, which was so crazy, it'll shock you. It was the Brazil Grand Prix. Mark Webber just had a major crash. Debris everywhere. So much so that the safety cars and yellow flags were brought out immediately. Unfortunately, Fernando Alonso, who was racing behind Mark Webber, didn't see the flags. And so, disaster.
He wasn't aware that. Oh! And we've got another crash. Stopped. Red flag. We think Alonso's come round and...
Luckily, he survived with no major injuries. But this, another Brazil race, did give one driver some big injuries, mental injuries. Max Verstappen was the favourite to win the 2018 Brazilian Grand Prix. He did everything correctly in the race, made the crucial overtakes, managed his tyres. He even built a decent gap from the rest, so it was clear Max was going to win the race.
That is Max Verstappen, the race leader, and he has spun coming down the hill.
What an idiot! What an idiot!
That was Esteban Ocon.
I think when you're a lap behind...
Max lost the race, of course, and finished P2.
I don't know what to say, mate.
Yeah, I know what to say. I hope I can't find him now in the paddock, because then he has...
He even stuck to his promise and gave a polite thank you to his new best friend. But seriously, that was some crazy reaction. Comment below what you think of this. Was Verstappen's reaction justified? But I know this driver's reaction was completely unjustified, especially since he went through a horrible crash.
Geben könnte. Und es steht zur Debatte, dass auch am nächsten schwerer Unfall von Villeneuve.
In Eau Rouge, genau da, wo man nicht...
Bro walked out of the car as if nothing happened. That's crazy. But the crazier thing was what happened at the restart of that Austria race. Since it took a while to clean the crash's debris, everybody was looking forward to the race starting again. But right at the restart, deja vu happened. They crashed again. Nigel Mansell's slow-starting Williams caused this second crash. 12 cars got involved in this chain reaction, so the race again got red flagged and took over 2 hours to restart. And finally, on the third try, the race started normally. Ironically, it was Nigel Mansell who won the race. Crazy, right? But now that we're entering the top 3 craziest crashes of this video, things are gonna get even crazier. Like this crash of Michael Schumacher, which was so brutal, it could have ended his life. It was at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Everybody started well until this happened.
They made contact. Michael Schumacher ran.
But surely will have to be the safety car, won't it? Michael Schumacher's race.
Will he? Oh!
The big smash there. Lewis got straight.
Now that was close, but not as close as this crash, because this was just disastrous. It was the race start of the German Grand Prix. Everybody was paying attention to the race leaders, until this backmarker, Luciano Berti, created one of the biggest crashes of the century.
Massive accident. Luciano Berti rolls it. Huge roll. That's short to bring out the red flag, Martin.
And surely they will a red flag it. The safety car is standing by. It says on the computer.
Luciano survived, but since he got so many injuries, he had to quit Formula One forever. But now, the moment you've been waiting for, the craziest crash of this video. It was the European Grand Prix. Kimi Raikkonen was in the lead and about to win the race. The McLaren driver was performing well until he had a big lockup, which caused a flat spot on his front right tyre. Raikkonen also damaged the barge boards, which are behind the front wheels. Clearly, the state of the tyres was not good. But he and the team decided to still keep going, as they didn't want to lose the leading position. This made Raikkonen's job very difficult, because with every lap, the car was getting harder and harder to drive. The tyre damage was creating major vibrations throughout the car and suspension, and was causing trouble under braking and through corners. But he still kept it together, and so still stayed P1. Everybody was ready to celebrate, as it seemed Raikkonen pulled off a miracle, until the final lap came. Because since the car was almost toast, McLaren's nightmare came true.
Raikkonen is under real pressure. There goes the tyre, let's go. He would have got a podium if he'd pitted, instead of which he's going to get absolutely nothing. He wanted to stay out there. The common sense man said bring him in. They didn't do it.
Safe to say, the team wasn't happy. I guess no one would be, especially since he was only a few turns away to victory. But not Raikkonen. He didn't care much about the race loss. Why? Because he's a legend.
So Kimi, you don't regret anything about the last lap, do you?
No.
Like I said, legend. But you know what's even more legendary? The most insane races in history. Like the time when one driver was racing at full speed while his car was on fire. Or when a race got so out of hand, it created the darkest moment in history. And I know you want to know more about this, so click the video right here.